course, the options here: copy of the array, copy of the first element, reference of the array or length of the array. This is straightforward, I think. What we send to a method if the parameter is an array is what? The reference of the array. Now, the next question is that JVM stores the array in an area of the memory. Of course, arrays and all other objects are stored in an area in the memory that we call the heap. Of course, that was mentioned in the material there. Now, the next question, methods, of course, as we covered, they can be static or non-static. So if a method is static in a class, what can we use? In other words, we can use only the static methods and variables. So this super and instance members are not possible because this refers to the object and the static method does not have the object. Clear? Now,
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, in an instance method, you can use everything. But in a static method, you can use things that are static only. So things that, of course, this and super and instance member are related to the instance, which is the object. So anything that is static, but the other way around, when a method is instance, then you can use everything, including static. Now, next question. This is again for the array. Which of the following statements is correct? When you have a two-dimensional array, in Java is what? It's an array of arrays. So you can, the first choice is clearly not possible. The second choice, whenever you are declaring an array, you don't specify the size here. You specify the size in the new if you want to specify. And of course, you cannot specify one as two here. Always in a two-dimensional array is declared. You put a data type, then you follow that by two square brackets that are empty. If you want to put the size will be with the object. So the first choice is not correct. The second, third choices are not correct. And the last choice is the one that is correct. You declare an array. And of course, you are initializing it to two rows, and each row contains two elements. Okay. Clear? Now, let us move to the next question. This is an output question here. And of course, for all kinds of questions that we have, we always start executing from the main method. So we start executing in the main method. So here we are going to create an object of the class called M5Q1. So where do we go? We go to the constructor that does not have parameter, which is this one. The one that is highlighted. When I highlight, do you see that?
Yes, doctor.
Yes.
Okay. So now we go to this constructor. This constructor, when you have this in a constructor, it means move to the other constructor, to the constructor where it has a string. So here, by starting here, I go to the second constructor, and the second constructor here is the one that has a string. So you are going to print here C, which is the parameter that was passed, which is B. Then when you finish the constructor, the second constructor, you go back to the first constructor and you complete A. So you're going to print B first, then A, then you go back to the main, and of course, the result will be B followed by A. Remember that we went to the constructor without arguments, the default constructor, and this B took us to the second constructor, and the parameter is B. So we go here, the variable or the string B is stored in the variable C or in the parameter C, and you are going to print it out. So B is going to be printed. Then you go back to the first constructor to complete it. Remember that this takes you to the second constructor. Once you are done with it, you complete the first constructor. So I printed B, in other words, here. Then I continue and print A. So you are going to get B followed by A.
دكتور في المين مو النيو ام 5 كيو هذه object.
Yeah, you are creating an object. Yes, creating an object. How do you create the object? You go to the constructors. Going to the constructors creates the object. We're not storing the object anywhere, but the effect of doing this is printing B, then printing A.
طب دكتور مو لما نسوي object نكتب التايب حقه بعدين الاسم بعدين نكتب انه يساوي.
Yeah, if you want to store it, creating the if I say for example here M5Q1, let's say M equals new, then after the object is created, the reference to the object is stored in that value. Here we are creating the object, we are not storing it, but the object is created.
تمام.
Now let us go to this to the next question. We have here a question where again we start execution in the main method. Notice here that we have a class, and this class here, it starts here. This is a class. The class has a constructor, then the class has the main method, then the class has a static method again in the class. So all of these are part of the class. Execution of all kinds of code in Java starts in the main. So in the main here, we are creating an array of M5Q2. So this is an array, and you are putting the elements. Remember that this is an array of objects. So the first object here, you are going to call M5Q2, and you pass the parameter 1. And for the second object, you are going to create an object, and you pass the parameter 2. Notice that here, once I run the statement, the new M5Q2, you go
يا ميوت تقدر.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
وعليكم السلام.
So the Teams crashed, so I had to restart my system. Should I go back to question 9 or 8?
8 دكتور.
الدكتور.
Yeah, يعني the crash happened after 8 or while we are covering 9 or while 8 or?
After 8.
After 8. Okay, so we will let us go on to question 9. Of course, here in this question we are.
Doctor, I don't think we finished 8.
Should I go back to 8?
Yeah, if that's okay with you.
Yes. Now in 8 we are creating an array that contains two objects of M5 Q2. The first object, it has X, which is 1, and the second object, it's going to have X is 2. Of course, here this is creating the object. It has a constructor with X, so it's going to create an object where X is equal to 1 in the first case, or in the first element of the array, and it's going to have 2 in the second element of the array. Then we call the static method, the method that appears down here, this method. It has two parameters. One parameter is an array, and the other parameter is a reference to the object only. So whenever you pass to a method an array, then the contents of the array, which are the objects within the array, can be modified. You can replace each of the elements. Whereas if I pass only an element directly, then this element cannot modify. So you may use a reference, which is an array, to modify its contents, but you cannot modify the reference itself. So as a result of this, when I go to the method, the array, if I do any changes to the array, it will reflect back. Whereas if I do anything to object 2, it will not reflect back. So here in the method, the first element of the array, we are creating a new object with X equals 3. And this is going to replace the one that is already there with the value of 1. Now, the second statement in the method, the one that is highlighted now, you are trying to modify the reference itself, actually the object 2 itself, but what we send to the method is not subject to modification. So this creation of a new object where X is 4 will not reflect back to the main. So the element 1 of the array remains as is. So when we print, you are going to print the X of the first object, which is 3, because we have replaced it. And the second element, it stays as is, it's 2. Remember that if you pass to a method an array, contents of the array, they can modify. If you pass a reference, then you may use the reference to modify the content of the object, but you cannot modify the reference. Here in this statement that is highlighted, we are trying to modify the reference that we pass. Modifying the reference in a method is not allowed. Or actually, it's not going to reflect back. Any questions here before I move to the next?
Yes, doctor, please.
Yes.
Doctor, when we pass an object, we pass the reference itself, right? We don't pass a copy of the contents.
Yeah, you pass the reference only.
The reference address, right?
Yes. The reference is equivalent to an address. So whatever we pass to the method, you cannot modify it, but you can use it to modify. So when I pass object 1, which is an array, I may modify the content of the array. In the second one, you are passing the reference to an object. You may modify the object, yes, but you cannot replace it by another object.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Now, in the next question, 9, here we have a static variable. Now, when you create, when there is a class, all the variables in the class, whether they're static or, of course, the static variables are initialized to 0. The instance variables, when an object is created, they are going to be initialized to 0. So here in the program, I'm creating an array list. And of course, here I have a local variable s, which is assigned the value of 0. Of course, here in the constructor of the class, you are incrementing c, which is each time an object is created, c will be incremented by 1. Here in the loop, we are going to iterate in the loop 5 times. When I is 0, you are going to add to s the value of c, which is the static value. Initially, it is 0 before any object is created. Once the first object is created in the second statement, c becomes 1, but it will be added in the second iteration of it. So in the first iteration, you add 0. In the second iteration, you add 1. In the third iteration, you add 2. In the fourth iteration, you add 3. And in the fourth iteration, you are going to add 4. So 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. And this will be the value of 10. Clear?
Again, Doctor, I didn't understand it.
Here, in this statement, I initially is 0. Clear?
Okay.
C, when the class, before we create objects, C is initialized to the value of 0.
C, okay.
C as a static value. So here you go you create an array list, then you are going to iterate in the loop starting from 0 up to 5, not including 5, so 5 times. The first time S equals S plus C. C is what now?
Is 1.
0. We did not create an object yet.
Okay.
So it is
0.
0. Then you add an element, create new M5Q3, an object is created. Creating an object will increment C from 0 to 1.
Okay.
Then you go to the loop back, I is 1 now. You are going to add to S the value of C. C is now 1. So you added 0 in the first iteration. You add 1 in the second iteration. Then you create a new object, and the new object will increment C by 1 to become 2.
2.
So you are going to add in the first iteration 0, second iteration 1, third iteration 2, fourth iteration 3, and the fifth iteration 4. So if you add 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, the result is what? 10.
Yeah, okay. Doctor?
Yes.
Why the C increment after we create another object? Because
each time, and this is a constructor, isn't it?
Yes.
Each time an object is created, you call the constructor. Calling the constructor will result in incrementing C by 1. So C actually counts how many objects are created.
But isn't it the C is depend on the object?
No, C is a static variable.
Okay, because it is static.
Because static, its value will not be 0 each time. Initially, it is 0 before objects are created. Each time an object is created, C will be incremented by 1.
طب دكتور مو المفروض تكون 5 يعني هي 5 يعني
No, you are adding C when it is 0. Then you are adding 1. Then you are adding 2. You are not printing C here. You are adding. You are adding 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. So here in the statement, S equals S plus M5Q3.C. So it will add the static variable. When C is 0, it's added. Then when C is 1, is added. So 0 plus 1. Then when it's 2, you are adding 2. It becomes 3. Then you're adding 3 to become 6. Then you are adding 4 to become 10.
Yeah. I know.
Okay. Now,
Doc,
yeah,
I have a question in question number 8.
yes.
Here when you create the array and then put new M5Q2 pass 1, what will be the value of the first element here?
Which in the main?
Yes, here.
Yeah, here, what is the value of x? In the first statement, the array is created. So in the first object, x is 1, and in the second object, x is 2.
So do you mean the array is going to be a of 1 and then 2?
No, the array will be a of 0, it will have x1, and a of 1, it will have x as 2.
Yeah, so 1 and 2, right?
Yes. But when I go to the method, 1 will be modified to 3.
Where is it getting modified?
Here, the highlighted statement. The
Okay.
array is passed to the method, and the method is modifying element 0 of the array to a new object where x is 3.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Doctor,
Yes,
this array is the elements of the array of type objects, right?
yes.
So
Yeah,
I can.
object M5Q2.
So if I have like another constructor in the M5Q2, which can pass to it a string, so I can add like an element of type integer and another element of type string.
Yes, yes, of course. It is all of them are objects.
So if the elements of type objects, it can be of different type.
Yeah, it depends on the constructor. You are creating objects. So if you have multiple constructors, then the constructor may have an integer parameter or a string parameter, they will work. They are all objects at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Now
I have a question about 8 as well.
Yes.
Here, if within the method we wrote the object, which is object 1, if object 1 we try to modify it and we try to assign a new array to it, why does it not affect the original variable in the main method? So if we wrote object 1 is equal to new and then array.
Yeah.
So now
what we sent to the method is not subject to modification. What I sent to the method, whether it is an array or any reference, I can use the reference to modify the content of that reference. But the reference itself, no, you cannot modify. So in the method here, I may modify the content of object 1, but I cannot modify object 1 itself. The reference cannot modify, but I can use it to modify the elements of the array. In summary, for methods, what I sent to the method is not subject to modification, but you may use it to modify the content of the reference.
Can I ask a question about this as well?
Yes, sure.
So if I sent, for example, an entire array and that I tried to assign a different array to it,
it won't affect that. It won't change. You may modify the content of the array, but not the whole array. You cannot replace it with another array, in other words.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, any more questions about 8? Nine.
دكتور في الناين كل مرة بتزيد يعني السي كل مرة تزيد 1 بعدين 2 3.
Yes, and here you are adding 1 plus 2 plus 3, s equals s plus, that's c.
في النهاية نزود 4 صحيح؟
Yeah, of course, we are adding 0 plus the array. This loop will run 5 times. The first time you are going to go from 0, 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, as I, the value of I. So as if you are adding 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and this is going to be 10.
Okay.
Any questions? Any more questions here? Now, in the next question, I think this is if the requirement is that private variables of a class have to be modified by other classes. So normally, as we always say, that variables are private in your class. If you need to allow modification of them, what do you need to add to your class?
Visitors.
Of course, setters. Setters are methods that allow you to modify the value. Now, if I look at the next question, which is
Doctor, I have a question.
yes.
If I declared a variable without typing private or public, it will be accessed by other classes or other.
Yeah, it will be accessed by other classes in the same package.
In the same package.
Yes. So if you don't put a modifier, a visibility modifier, then it is default, and the default is package access. So all classes within the same package may access the variable directly.
When it can be accessed out of the package?
Yeah, out of the package. If it's public, then it's accessible anywhere.
Okay.
If it is protected, it will be accessed within the same package and in any subclass anywhere.
Okay.
Okay, now let us look at the next question here. You have a main program in which we create a date object, then we clone it. And of course, you are going to print here x equals y. Of course, what is the error here?
We should do upcasting of the y.
Yes, remember that the clone method returns an object. So here, when you want to assign it to the date, you need to clone it. You need to cast it here because the return type of clone is object. So I cannot directly say date y equals x dot clone. I need to downcast the object to date to order to store it in date.
دكتور تعيدها ما فهمت.
Yeah, now clone method is a method that returns, the return type is an object that is stored in a reference of type object.
Okay.
So you cannot directly assign it to any other type without downcasting.
Okay.
Doctor,
Yes.
what if the method clone return the value with the casting? So it will be right in this situation.
Yeah, if this is the case, yes. If the clone method, the return type of the object is not object, it is something else. But the clone method, the one that is inherited in the from object class, it returns an object of stored in a reference of type object. So most of the time that you need to downcast it.
Doctor,
Yes.
what is the difference between the double equality and the equality that he used in this example?
Yeah, double equal means test for equality. One equality means assignment. X equals Y, you are assigning X to be equal to Y.
Yeah, clear.
Although this is it's meaningless. It's not a good idea to put it in the print, but if you in a print you say X equals Y, what will happen here? Two things will happen. X will get the value of Y first, then X will be printed. So it's not going to give you an error. It's going to do two things: assign X to the value of Y, then print X. Okay. Now the next question, which of the following statements regarding abstract classes is false? Of course, here it's clear that the abstract classes, you cannot make instances, you cannot make objects. In the abstract class, can have instances created using the constructor. Remember that in the abstract class, you cannot create objects of the abstract class. This is again statements regarding abstract classes that is false.
Doctor, again, number 12.
The abstract class, it has constructors, yes, but I cannot create objects of it. You cannot create objects of the abstract class. Instances means object.
Oh, okay.
Now, in the next question, which of the following statements regarding abstract classes is false? Of course, the first one, abstract classes, they can have constructors. Normally they do. A class that contains abstract methods must be abstract. This is true. It is possible to declare abstract class and no abstract methods there. But a data field is not abstract, does not apply to data fields, applies to methods and classes. So a class may be abstract, a method may be abstract, but a variable cannot be, or a data field, in other words, cannot be abstract. Cannot use abstract for data fields. Now, the next question, which of the following is true? Now, of course, normally a class represents one thing. When I have a class like, let's say, rectangle, or you don't normally create a class for multiple things. You create a class for one thing only. So this is clear. Of course, these are a class should always contain a no argument constructor. No, it may or may not. The constructors must always be public. No, you may put constructors in your class that are not public. Constructors cannot be protected. They can. Constructors can be protected. Now the question 15. Which of the following statements is wrong? Of course, a class must implement comparable to compare its objects. This is true. In order to be able to compare objects, you must implement the comparable interface. The comparator interface has the compare method for comparing two objects of the same type. This is true. The comparable has the compare method for comparing two objects of different types. This is wrong. Normally, this is comparing two objects of
the same type.
The same type. Arrays that sort is a method for ordering an array of objects. It uses compare to method for the ordering. So this is true. So the how does it order the elements? It's based on compare to. If your class from which the object is created does not have compare to, it will give you an error that this is not comparable. Now yes.
مرة ثانية الفقرة دي ما فهمت.
Yeah, the arrays that sort is a method that sorts an array of any object. But in order for it to work, then the array is made of objects. The objects in the array must be from a class that is comparable. In other words, the class from which the objects of the array are made should have implemented the comparable interface. Because the sort method uses compare to order the elements. Ordering of the elements depends on the result of the compare to, which must be present in your class.
Okay.
Okay, now let us go to this output questions, which are testing various ideas of your array here of your. So we start creating an array that contains 6 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of course, their indices will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you are here starting from the length of the list minus 2. So not the last element, the element before the last. And you are going to element 0, decrementing by 1. Each element will be copied to the element after it. So in other words, element number 5 here will be copied here to 6. Here, remember, my list of I will be copied into my list of I plus 1. So 5 will be copied, replacing 6. Then 4 will replace 5. Then 3 will replace 4. Then 2 will replace 3. Then 1 will replace 2. And when the I is 0, we stop. So the 1 will stay as is, and 1 is here, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you print your array, these are the elements of the array.
When R is less than 0, Doctor, we should.
Yeah, of course, when I is 0, this is the last. When I becomes minus
Yeah.
1, you go out of the loop. So you are going to, in the last iteration, element in location 0 will go to 1. But element in location 0 will stay as is. It's not going to be affected. So all the elements starting with when I initially is, of course, the length here is 6 minus 2 is 4. Element in location 4. Here, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 5, will be copied in location 5, and so on. Let me see here. Okay. Clear? Are you clear about this? Just following the elements, you replace the values and you compare them. You are going to 5 will go to element in location 4 will go to 5. Element in location 3 will go to 4, and so on. Now, in this program, you create an array that has elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you call the method increase. Then you create another array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you call another method, or you call the method increase, where you pass an element of the array. Now, I think this appeared earlier. If you pass to a method an array, then the method may modify the array. So here in this static method, increase, if the parameter is an array, it takes all the elements in an array, and each element is incremented by 1. So the elements of the array will become 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, in the second array, you are not passing the array, you are passing element y0, which is 1. So practically, you are passing 1. So if 1 here you are passing as a regular variable, the increase of 1 is not going to affect the array, so it stays as 1. But of course, if you pass the whole array, the array is going to be incremented. This is similar to a previous question in the MCQ. The idea, I mean. So if you pass to a method an array, then modifying the array in the method will take place. Whereas if you pass an element of the array, passing an element of the array is not an array. You are passing the value of that element. So passing a value does not affect that value. So the value stays as is. So here the array becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. and you are printing here x of 0, which is 2. Because every element has been increased by 1. And for the array y, the element 0 has not been modified. So it stays as is.
دكتور
Yes.
the second method if you return y it will change the value, right?
Yeah, if you return y and store it, it will affect. But as a parameter, no. As a parameter, if it's an array, then the array is modified. If you pass a regular variable to a method, then y will not be affected. Here, y will increase inside the method, but this modification will not go back to the main.
حتى لو كانت خارج الميثود يعني الواي بلس بلس.
What do you mean خارج الميثود؟
يعني في المين ميثود كان.
Here we talk about a parameter. So if you modification inside the main method, of course, this is the modification will take place.
Okay.
Now, in the next output question here, of course, we start from the main again. So you go to the constructor B without parameters. We have a constructor B. But now, in every constructor of a subclass, you must explicitly have super to call the constructor of the super, or super without arguments is going to be added. So if I add super without arguments here in B, but I don't have A without arguments in the class A, which is the parent of B. And this will give you an error because A without arguments is not defined, is not available. Remember that the constructor of a subclass will always have super available, explicitly or implicitly. So practically this here is similar to say here as if we have here super. If you don't include it, it will automatically be added. So in B, if we say super without arguments, it means that go to the constructor of the super class that has no arguments. But that does not exist. So it gives you an error.
Doctor, in the midterm, I have to specify the error or just?
Yeah, of course. In the question here, if there is an error, indicate the reason. It's not enough to say error. You have to specify why the error is.
دكتور هو هي المشكلة في السوبر بس.
Yes. مشكلة إنه السوبر does not contain the constructor A without argument.
أنت تقصد ال object B without argument. That's make the problem.
Yes, here the problem is that the presence of لو في هنا في الكلاس A without arguments as a constructor, it will work. But here we are missing this because super is added. If you don't add it yourself, it will be added. Now in the next question, we have class C and D extends C. We have the constructors here. So in the main, what do we create? We create an object of type D. When you create an object of type D, where do you go?
To the no-arg constructor.
Go to the no-argument constructor D, and this takes you, this 3 takes you to the second constructor in that class that has an integer argument, which is the second constructor. Now, in the second constructor here, what do we do?
It will insert super.
It will insert super, so you go to the super without arguments. That's going to print for you 1. Then once you finish this, you complete this constructor by printing 3. Then you go back and continue the constructor that has no arguments and print 2.
Doctor,
Yes.
I have a question. If it was C, the reference was C, راح يطلع error عشان الميثود مو موجودة في C ولا لا؟
No, we're not calling methods. If the reference was C, the same thing would happen.
لا I mean في المين كان C بدال D.
No, new C.
إيه
You
هنا
mean here?
C yeah بيطلع error صح؟
No, C is a superclass of D. So you can store an object of type D and a reference of type C.
But we don't
This-
have the public C int X.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Even this is not going to have any effect. So the result exactly the same even if I have new D.
Okay, thank you.
Because in that assignment statement, you first create the object, then you assign it. So the output that we produce here is a result of creating the object. It's not related to storing the reference anywhere. So this reference this object that we create could be stored in a reference of type D or a reference of type C or anything higher.
هو دكتور معلش لو تعيدها كلها والله ما فهمتها زين.
Yeah. Here, when we let me see if unfortunately here in this machine I don't have TDJ. Let us start here. You are creating an object of type D. So where do you start? You start here.
Yeah, because without argument.
Without argument. So you start executing the body of this. So what is the first statement?
This 3.
This 3, which means go to the constructor that has integer as a parameter.
D, public D int X.
So I will move here.
Okay.
And X is what? 3. So you are going to print 3. But before that, what do I have? There is an implicit super here.
Okay.
Super here will take me where?
To C.
To C. So what do I print?
1.
1. So 1 is printed. Then you print X, which is 3.
Yeah.
Then you finish this 3, you complete and print 2. We start here, then we go to the second constructor. Of course, after I finish the second constructor, I will complete the first constructor. Moving to the second constructor does not mean that I will not come back to it. I will come back to it.
يعني دكتور احنا لو شيل الدي اللي without argument.
Yes. This took me to D with integer. D with integer took me to super.
Okay.
Then I continue here. So this will print 1. And this will print 3. And I go from D3, which is a constructor with an integer, to complete the constructor without arguments, and you print 2.
Okay.
Now, in the next question, I have a class fruit that has one instance variable weight and a constructor. And here you are creating an array of fruit objects with double. Of course, here, this is the argument being integer in place of a double is fine. So it doesn't create an error. When you call Java that sort, it assumes that the array that you have created is from a class that implements comparable. But fruit as a class did not implement comparable interface. So this will give you an error, which is a runtime error that the fruit class does not implement the comparable interface. Remember that in order for you to sort, then the class from which your objects are made the object of the array, must be comparable. Otherwise, a runtime error will occur. Okay.
Doctor, I have a question, please.
Yes.
Only primitive data types can implement the sort method?
No. Arrays that sort.
Unless
Arrays that sort, it receives an array of various types. This array could be integer or double or any object. It's an array of anything. So accepts arrays of all types, except that it will give you an error if the array is from a class that is not comparable. So inside the method sort, if the parameter is an array of objects, it will check whether the class from which the objects are made, is it comparable or not. Of course, using instance of. When you use instance of comparable, it will tell you whether the class from which the object is created does it implement comparable interface or not. So if it gives you true, it means that it's comparable, it will go ahead and compare. If it's not comparable, then it will give you an error because compare to is not available for this class.
So I have to override it if
yes,
if I want to
use the fruit class. In order for this to work, you must implement the comparable interface in which you specify the compare to method. You override the compare to.
Okay, thank you so much.
Now, the next question, this is talking about array lists. You create an array list and you add, this is empty. So you add Jidda to it. It will be in the first as one element in the string. Then here you are cloning the list to another list. So you're creating list one. By cloning it, what will it have?
Different reference.
Yeah, it will contain, or list one will contain the Jeddah as well.
Yes.
Okay. Then in the first list, you are going to add Riyadh. So the first list will contain Jeddah. It contained Jeddah initially. Then you add Riyadh. And list one, you are going to add Mecca. Remember that the cloning an array list will result in creating another list that is different. So when I add to list Riyadh, it will be added to the first list, not to the second, not to the cloned one. Clear?
Which is a deep clone, right?
Yes, of course. When here you are, the list contains Jeddah only, so it's clone. So both list and list one, they contain Jeddah. In list, I added Riyadh, and list one, I added Mecca. So the first list will contain Jeddah Riyadh, and the second will contain Jeddah Mecca. Any more questions here in the output? The programming questions. Of course, here in this question, you are asked to write a method only. So it's not the whole program, only the method. And in the program, the main method is given to you. So you don't need to worry about writing the main method. Of course, here, this method that you are requested to write is a method that finds the maximum product of two integers in a given array. Of course, an array consists of elements. If you multiply each two elements, you want to find what is the maximum product that is there. Of course, I have to try all possibilities: 0 with 1, 0 with 2, and so on. And of course, here the maximum pair here is 7 and 8, which means that the result of multiplying 7 by 8. And of course, the product is 56. So you need to try this out. How do I do this? I will start by, in the method, sending the array to the method, and the method will print for you the maximum product. here, but it is printed inside the method. Initially, you are going to assign the maximum product to a negative value, the minimum possible. Then you are initializing your I and J. Of course, I and J you are going to, they are the maximum that you have seen in the elements. So I will go through all the elements from 0 to the length -1, which means here, if I take this, you are going to start from 2 up to 8, and you are going to try 2 with 3, 2 with 5, 2 with 7. If you find that the product is greater than the product that you assigned here, you are going to update I and J. So if the maximum product is smaller than the result of multiplying number of I with number of J, then in this case, you update the product and you update the maximum I and the maximum J. Because at the end, I'm going to print what is the value that resulted in the maximum, the value of I and the value of J, the value at ith position and the value at the jth position. So simply here in the array, you need nested loop. One loop will take one element and the other will multiply all the elements. So you try 2 with 3. If you find that 2 with 5 is larger, then you update the maximum and you update the pair, which is 2 and 5. And so on, you modify this until it produces the maximum of I and J. Of course, this is given to you and the result is given that this is the pair, the maximum pair, and so on.
Doctor,
Yes.
and the max pair product, what's the min value do?
Min value is the smallest integer. So you start the maximum by a smaller value. So when you start comparing 2 with 3, 2 with 3 is higher than the minimum value. So initially, the max I will be in the loop here will be 2, and max J will be 3, and the product will be 6. And you are going to continue 2 with 5, and you are going to update I and J accordingly.
Okay.
Okay, this is, of course, this is a solution. There may be other solutions to this question. Now, in the second question, this is a long programming question in which you will write superclass, subclass, and the main. This is similar to what we have been doing in the lab. So here, a real estate company has 2 types of rental properties, apartments and stores. Design the class property that has the instance variable ID. So here in our the superclass, which is the property, it has one instance variable, which is the ID, and it's written between parentheses integer. It has only one constructor with one argument. Override the equals method based on ID. So we are going also to include in this class the equals method. And of course, the details are specified here. So this class here we are writing the class. Of course, here the instance variable is ID. Of course, instance variables should always be private. The constructor which has the ID, that ID equals ID. Of course, here you are requested in the class to get for the ID and set for the ID. These are straightforward. Now, since this class, you are requested to write the abstract method rent total that returns the amount, returns a value. If this is an abstract method, then the class itself must be abstract. Remember that if you are requested within the code of a class to include an abstract method, it means that the whole class should be abstract. So this is a method, rent total, that's going to return a double to you. which is the value of the rent for the property. And of course, the way of calculating the rent varies from one property to the other. The equals method, it should have a parameter of type object. And of course, this method is Boolean. Remember that in the equals method, you have to check your object if it is a property before you downcast. Remember that ID is not visible at the object level. The ID is visible at the property level because this is an instance variable in the property. So you need to downcast. But in order for downcasting to be protected from cast exceptions, you need to check if the object that you are passing to the class is an object of a class that is property. Of course, property or subclasses of property. This will work if the object passed to this method is an apartment or a store. Now, if this is the case, you return true or false. If the object is not a property, you return false directly. Now the next this is the super class. Of course, here you figure out that the class should be abstract because you were requested to write an abstract method. So when you are asked to write an abstract method, it means the whole class should be abstract. Now we are going to write the subclass as well. The subclass is apartment. It has two instance variables, area and rent per square kilometer. So these are the two additional variables that you need to add to the subclass apartment. Now you are also requested to override the toString method to return all instance values. Remember that in the superclass, you are not requested to write the toString method. So you cannot rely or assume that it exists. You assume only the ones that is given to you. Of course, here, do not include getters and setters. So in this subclass, the question is telling you not to include getters and setters. So you just add what is required. In this class, we need to make it comparable for the apartment. So one apartment will compare to another apartment based on what? Based on the area. So here, this is the header of the class. It's apartment that extends property, and it implements comparable because this is required in the question. Now, the additional variables area and rent per square kilometer. These are the additional variables. You have, of course, you have to have a constructor. And the constructor constructing an apartment requires that you specify the ID, the area, and the rent per kilometer. Of course, this is the constructor with an argument for each variable. So you have here ID, area, and rent per kilometer. Initializing the ID requires calling of super because ID is part of the super class. And initializing area and rent per kilometer is done directly. Now you need to override the toString method. Now, since I don't have a toString method in the super, in order for me to print the ID, I need to use the getter. Remember that if I go up, the property class, it has a get ID. So in order for you to print the ID, you use get ID. The area is the direct variable in the subclass, you print it directly. And the rent per kilometer is a direct variable in the class, so use it directly. Now, the rent total, the abstract method that you need to override in the subclass, it is simply returning the area times rent per kilometer. So simply in that method, you override the method and you specify the return, which is area times rent per kilometer. The next method that you need to include in the subclass is a compare to method. And the compare to method is going to compare two apartments based on the area. So of course, you could write an if structure for this one. If area is smaller than O that area, then you return a negative value. And if it is greater, you return a positive value. And if it is equal, you return 0. But you could use double that compare. We have a method in the double class called compare that compares area with another area. It gives you negative, positive, or 0. But of course, this is not assumed that you solve it this way. You may solve it using an F structure. Just if area is smaller than or that area, you return negative. If it is greater, you return positive. And if it is equal, you return 0. Now for the second subclass, it was similar. So you don't need to write it. Assume that the store exists. No need to write anything for it. The class extends property and implements the abstract method rent total. So we assume that the class, without knowing its details, that it is a subclass of property and it has rent total. Now in the main method, we are creating an array of property, and of course in this array of property we are putting elements. Some of them are apartments, some are stores, similar to what we do in the lab. So the first element is an apartment. You specify its ID, it is area, and it is rent per square kilometer. And for the store, it is 330 here. Of course, these are the parameters of the store. You don't need to worry about this because this is given to you. So not, this is not the part that you need to write. And this is, of course, for the store. Again, it's similar to the apartment. Now, you are required to display the sum of the rent of all apartments. Your array consists of some elements that are apartments and some elements that are not apartments. So iterate through your loop. Of course, you initialize the sum to 0. You iterate through all the elements of your array. And if the element in the array is an apartment, you add it to the sum. You add the rent total to the sum. And of course, you iterate through all of them. This is similar to the lab in which you calculated the average salary and the average GPA of students and employees. So here you need only an if statement with instance of to check if it is an apartment. You add it to the sum. Then at the end you print the sum. That is that's all the questions of the midterm of last semester.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Now, after are there any questions regarding the? I think the programming part is straightforward, similar to the labs that we have developed earlier. Normally, we don't ask you to write the two subclasses because they are similar. So one is enough, and the other is very similar to this.
Doctor, about the record, we will find general, right?
Yes. Yeah, the organizers. So they started the meeting. I think they started the recording. Now, after I completed solving this this midterm exam, I will open the floor for your question. But before I open before we start your questions, let us give me a break, 5 minutes, then we'll continue with your questions. Prepare your questions, then I will answer all your questions in a few minutes. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
Now we'll open the floor for your questions. So if you have any questions, please go ahead. Now to order the questions, I have here and there. I have Abdul Razak.
Yes, doctor.
Yes, please.
I have like 4 to 5 different questions, if that's okay.
45 questions.
4 to 5. No, not 45.
No, 4 to 5. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Who else has questions? So go ahead with your questions.
They're about the PowerPoint modules shared. If you have them with you right now, or I can share my screen. It's up to you.
Yeah, please share your screen. That would be quicker to.
Okay.
So I will stop my sharing, and now you share your screen.
Let me. 1 second. Can you see my screen, doctor?
Yes.
Yes. So the first question is here. If we about static and static binding and dynamic binding, is does dynamic binding mean that the binding of the object is done during the runtime, like during
Yes.
when the program is compiling?
No, the dynamic binding, it means when the program is executing. The static binding, it means that before the program starts executing at compile time.
Okay.
Normally,
so if yes.
Yeah, normally if a method can be bound at compile time, it will be done. But of course, things that are related to objects, which are instance methods, they cannot be bound at compile time because the objects are not created yet.
Wait, can you repeat that point again, please?
Yeah, the instance method, they will be they are related to objects, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, since they are related to objects at compile time, objects are not yet created. So we cannot specify which method to use because a method may exist in the superclass and exist in the subclass. So to decide to use which one to use, we depend on the object. But the objects are not created yet, so this is delayed. We say that this is late binding or dynamic binding. After the objects are created, when we reach to the call for that method, you are going to associate it with the one depending on the object. If the object of the superclass, you go to the method in the superclass. If the object of the subclass, you go to the method in the subclass.
Okay, so the run method here would cause the program to crash, right?
What do you mean? What do you mean by crash?
It will cause an error, right?
No, if a method, of course, the compilation, it will make sure that the method exists. So you are sure that the method will be there. But the decision of whether to use the one in the superclass or to use the one in the subclass will be done at runtime.
Okay, so how can I make use of this? Like how can I make use of this when I'm asked?
Yeah, you use this Now, assume that you are printing an object.
Yes.
Objects that are stored in an array. Assume that this is similar to the last example that we solved, like the property and apartment. So you are calling the method rent total, isn't it?
Yes.
Now rent
Yes.
total, the method is available in the superclass as abstract. It's available in the subclasses. So if the object is apartment, you are going to go to the method in the apartment class. If if your object is a store, you go to the method in the store. So deciding exactly which method, it will be done at runtime after the objects are created.
Okay.
This is not needed for static methods, because for static method, they don't depend on the object, they depend on the reference. So I can know in advance that I will use the one depending on the reference. So it doesn't, I don't need to delay this decision. I can make it earlier.
During compile time.
Yes, during compile time. Before you start executing, you know that for a static method, that since it depends on the reference, if your reference is the property, you go to the one in the property.
If my reference is property, yes, okay.
If the method is static.
Okay. Yes. We can also call static methods using the class name, right?
Yeah, of course. The proper way of calling static methods is the class name. Although you may call them with object, this is not the preferred way, but you may call them with object.
Okay.
If you call a static method with an object, automatically the object will be replaced by the class of the reference before the program starts executing.
Before the program starts executing, what do we do?
The object will be replaced by the type of the reference.
The type of the okay.
So this is automatically done before you start executing. So the confusion will be removed right at the beginning.
So the compiler would know which one I'm referring to, yes?
Yes, sure.
Okay. My second question, Doctor, is why does orange here cause an error?
Where?
Here, this one.
Here, fruit that you have stored. What is it?
It's a downcasted apple.
No, it is the object. The object stored in fruit is what? It's an apple. So can I cast an apple to an orange? No. This will give me a cast exception.
Okay. Because you can't change between two subclasses.
No. So you can cast between the fruit and apple, but you cannot cast between, because here when you cast fruit to an apple, you are saying that a fruit, you are converting a general fruit to an apple. This may or may not work. It depends on what is stored in that apple.
Okay.
So if it was an apple, it will work. If you cast an apple as the previous one, it will run correctly. If you are casting to orange, it will give you an error. Now, to protect your program from these exceptions, what do? You use instance of. Because I think it's mentioned in the next slide. So if you use instance of, you are saying that if the object stored in my reference is an apple, cast to an apple. If it's an orange, cast to an orange. But do not go directly and cast without the check.
Doctor, can I cast it indirectly by making casting to a fruit and then from fruit to orange?
It's already fruit, so you don't need to cast to a fruit.
No, I mean from apple to fruit.
Yeah, but the casting, it will create an exception if the object is not orange. The problem here is that if an object of of orange cannot be casted, an apple cannot be casted to orange.
Okay, okay. Okay, I understand. Let me see one. Yes, here. Doctor, about this one.
Yeah.
The equals method. Can you hear me, doctor?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so here the double equals would test the address or the reference, but the
Yeah,
equals
this is the default. When you override the equals method, you want to change it from this. You want to depend on the content of the object, not on the reference. But this is the one that is inherited.
inherited from the object class, that is.
Yes, yes, from the object class.
The dot equals originally it compares the content.
No, it compares the addresses.
So we override it in order to compare the contents here.
Yes.
Here, in line 7 and 8, we made circle 2 point to the same address as circle 1. Is that right?
Yes. So you are coming the reference.
And
Then in
circle 3 has the same content.
Yeah, it is a different circle with content the same. Now, when you call equals, the equals, of course, if you say equals circle 1 with circle 2, they are one circle. So it will give you true that they are the same. But if you compare 1 with 3, the reference is not the same, but the content is the same.
So here because it is the original equal. It's not the overridden one. So it compares the references.
Yeah, if you use the original one, it will give you true for the first, it will give you false for the second.
So the dot equals acts just like the double equal, which is this one, I mean.
Yes, yes.
So what about here? Here we used overriding for the equals method in order to compare the contents here.
Yes. So overriding the
Okay,
equals method gives you correct results. Because I want, when I compare two circles that have the same content, to give me true. So when you override the equals method, now it will give you true in both cases.
Okay, okay. Either for reference or for the content.
Yes, of course. Reference, it means that you have the same object. If the reference is different, it means that the content is the same.
Okay, okay, okay. Let me see what. Here, why does it show that circle 1 and circle 2 are not equal despite the fact that they are pointing to the same address? Oh, it's a different address here. Oh, okay, okay. I didn't pay attention. Sorry.
So when you override the method, now it depends on the content. Might give you true or not.
Yeah. Here, because they used circle 2 equals new circle, so they instantiated a new object.
Yes.
That points to a different reference, yes. For this one, doctor, if possible.
Yes. Yes. What is confusing? You have here in the shape class, you have a static method and you have an instance method. And
in line 43.
Okay.
Here is the address being copied?
Yeah, the address is being copied.
So we made circle object 2 point to the same exact address as circle
Yes.
object 1.
Yes. So when you call the instance method, you depend on the object. When you call the static method, you depend on the reference.
So static ones are like owned by the class. So every single instance of that class can have access to the same exact static
Yes.
static data field as the remaining objects, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's not related to object. So simply here in line I think 44, when you say here circle object 2, circle object 2 as you defined it earlier, it is what? What type is it? Shape. So this is automatically replaced by shape. So the static method, as if you said shape, that print static method. So whenever you use an object in a static method, you replace it by the reference type.
Okay. But circle object 1 here is of type circle. But now we use circle object 2, despite it being from type circle. It resulted in being in circle being printed, not the one in the
Yeah, of
parent
course,
class.
here
Why is
depends,
that,
as
Doctor?
it depends on the reference. In line 38, you have circle object 1 equals the new circle. So what is the type of your
Yes.
reference?
It's a circle.
Circle. So you replace circle object 1 by circle in line 40, 13, 40.
Line 40.
Yeah, the circle object 1 will be replaced by circle. Because
Okay.
circle object 1, what is its type? It is circle. Now in the next block, since the reference is shape, then you replace the circle object 2 by shape.
But isn't it of type circle?
Doesn't matter. The static methods, they are not associated with the object. So what matters is the type of the reference.
The type of the reference. Which is this one here, shape. Okay. Doctor, for module 7, can you see my screen here?
Yes.
I didn't understand this slide. Like how can especially these two sentences, because they point to the same exact thing, but they mean opposite things. So can you please explain this, please?
No, what I'm seeing is that this is the static method shape.
Oh, maybe I shared. I'm sharing module 6. Let me adjust it 1 second.
So let me take a question from Fatima, then I will come back to you to adjust your.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, please, your question.
My question is, if a superclass implements clonable and comparable, will the subclass will inherit the comparable and clonable as well, or not?
Yes. Yeah, if a class implements an interface, then this implementation will apply to all subclasses that will be there.
So if we overridden the compare to class, method in the superclass, then I will be able to use it even in the subclasses.
Yeah, you may override it if you like. If it becomes optional. So if a class implements comparable, now the comparable is available for that class. Now subclasses may override the compare to method or use it directly.
Okay. And another question, sorry, is does the equals method compare objects of different type, or is it as the compare to method? It doesn't.
The default it compares object of any type. It's not necessarily that the two objects are of the same type. Now, when you override the method, you decide whether you want to accept comparison between objects of the same class or objects of different class.
So if it was the default one, then it will compare it, and will return a boolean if it was true or
Yeah,
false.
the one that is inherited from object, it will compare the references. Practically, it will check whether these two references refers to the same object.
Okay.
This is the default. Using the equality, it means that are they the same object or not? Do you have, in other words, one object or two objects? If it is one object, it will give you true. If it's two objects, it will give you false.
Okay, thank you.
Faisal?
Could you re-explain question 11, please?
Question 11 of what? The midterm?
Yes.
Okay. Question 11. We go back to it. Share my screen. Okay. This is, you are creating an object of type date and store it in X. Okay.
Okay.
Then you are creating a clone of X and store it in Y. But the clone method, it is the return type is object. The clone method in the date class, it returns an object, or the return type of the clone method that is inherited in the from the object class is object. So you need to downcast.
So it should be date y equals between parentheses date.
No, it should be here. In order for it to be correct, you need to write it this way.
Okay.
So here you need to override, to downcast the clone today. It will work.
And for the print line, wouldn't it cause a compile error when
No.
assigning?
Assignment statements, they could appear anywhere. Their effect here, when you say X equals Y, is that Y will get the value of X, X will get the value of Y, then you are going to print X. So this statement, it has two statements, in fact.
Assigning and printing.
Assigning and printing.
It's
not a good style to do, but this is the effect of it.
So when running this code, it would just return the first value of X height, the original one.
Yes, here, this statement here, when you say X equals Y, this is exactly the same as I say here the following. Just put it here. This is the effect. X equals Y, then you print X.
And what if I wrote have overridden the clone method? Do I need to downcast?
If you have overridden, yeah, date class overridden. The date class, it has overridden the clone method, but the clone method return type is kept as object. This is why you need to downcast.
No, I meant if I overridden the clone method.
If you did it yourself, if the return type of your clone, you modified it to your class, you don't need to downcast. But if you kept it as object, then you need to downcast.
Okay, could you just give me an example of how to downcast it outside the main method?
Whenever you use the clone, the downcasting is required at any place where you downcast.
No, I mean, could you write the code?
Code for the clone?
Yeah, for the yeah, to override
Now,
the clone.
when I'm writing the clone method in my class, unfortunately, I don't have the compiler here, but anyway, let me write it here. Now, assume that you are writing a class and you want to include the clone method in your class. Now, the clone method that is inherited in the class is protected. So normally you write public for your method. And of course, you have an option of making this to be object, keep it as object, and of course clone. This is in your class that you override or that implements clonable interface. Now you write the body of the method. Now, if you make the header of your method as object, then any usages of this in the main require downcasting. But assume that in the date object, they did it this way. They did it with date instead of object. Then downcasting is not required anymore, because the object will be returned in a reference of type date. So the downcasting would not be required, because in the clone you are going to return an object of type date. Now, if the return type here is object, then you need the downcast. If the return type is date, you don't need downcast.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
More questions?
Doctor, one of my classmates sent a question in the chat. If you can please see it.
Okay. Let me. Can you please review in general signatures, the class itself, its contents? I did not understand what's the meaning of signatures for the class. Methods, constructors. Now, when you create a class, the constructors of the class, of course, they should be the same name as the class itself. The constructors normally are public. You may modify them otherwise if needed, but the default for constructors and methods, they are public. Now, you may have more than one constructor in the class, but the parameters of the constructor should be different. So this is called overloading. Overloading constructors means that having multiple constructors, allowing you to have multiple constructors, it means that the signatures will be the same. Signature of a constructor or a method, it includes the name plus the parameters. So if you have two constructors, then the name is the same. Of course, the name cannot be different anyway. And the parameters should be different. So one without parameters, one with parameter. What matters for the parameters is their type, not their name. So if you have one parameter and you have one parameter, you may have two parameters, two constructors with one parameter. One is integer and the other is double, or one integer and the other is string, and so. So it's not only the count of the parameters, the type what matters. If I have, for example, a method, let's say X, and this method has two parameters, then you can have multiple methods with the same name and different parameters. These parameters could be integer, for example, integer double, integer string, double string, and so on. All of these are different signatures. Is this what your question? Now the return type of the method, because methods, they may be void or they have return type, is not part of the signature. So what matters is whenever the names of the methods are the same, that the parameter types are different. Yeah, if you talk about the visibility modifiers, now the visibility modifiers affects when you where do you use these methods and constructors. If you make the constructors public, methods and constructors, of course, members, then they can be used everywhere. Now, if you make, for example, the constructor private, then you cannot use it to create an object outside the class itself. So I may use it to create an object of that class, but within the class only, not in a test program, for example, or anywhere else. If you make the constructors and methods without a visibility modifier, it means that you may use them anywhere in that package. Of course, a package in Java is simply a folder. So within the folder in which you put your Java files, then all the classes within that folder are in the same package. If you use protected, in addition to the classes or within the same folder, you may use that constructor or method in any subclass, even if it occurs in a different package. Recommendation for variables that they should be private, methods and constructors, they should be public, unless there is a justification for making them otherwise.
I think the constructor of the math class is private,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, of course. This
That's
is to
fine.
block you from creating objects of type math. So the normally when classes they are not intended to make objects of, one way of preventing this is what? Is to make
Making
the
them private.
constructor private. What is the other way?
Making them final.
No, making them final does not prevent you from
It prevents
creating
overriding methods. but-
abstract.
Yeah.
If you make the class abstract, then this blocks you from creating objects.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a question here in the chat. Suppose A is you are seeing my screen.
Yes.
Suppose A is abstract class, B is a concrete class of a subclass of A. Both A and B have a default constructor. So they have a constructor without parameters. Which if the following is correct? So can I create an object A of the superclass and store it in the reference of A? I mean, let's look at the statements. One, is one correct?
No,
Why?
because we can't create an instance of an abstract class.
Yeah, because A is abstract. So A is not correct. Now, the second one, A is the reference, which is the abstract class, and B is the object. So can I create an object B and store it in A?
Yes.
Yes. Now, 3, of course, you cannot create an object of A anyway. So whether the reference is A or or B. So 3 is not correct anyway. Now 4, can I create an object of the subclass and store it in reference of the subclass?
Yes.
Yes. Now let me assume that A is not abstract. Just say that A is a class and B is a subclass. Assume that both of them are subclasses, not abstract. Then the first statement is
Correct.
correct. Second is
Correct.
correct. Third one,
Still incorrect.
incorrect. You cannot store an object of the superclass and a reference of the subclass. So if the classes are not abstract, then 1, 2, and 4 are correct. 3 is
Doctor,
wrong anyway.
I have a question. Can we have the superclass non-abstract and the subclasses abstract?
Yes.
Okay, then if we had like B abstract, B object equal new B, this is wrong, right?
Yes.
طب وإذا
Yeah,
A
all scenarios are
object new
possible.
B?
يعني when you have two classes A and B, one could be abstract and the other is the regular. A could be abstract, B is not abstract, or A and B both are abstract, or A is not abstract and B is abstract. So all
Yes.
scenarios are possible.
طيب if A is not and B is abstract, a second option is wrong.
Yeah, the second and fourth is wrong because you cannot create an object of the abstract class.
Okay, thank you.
Doctor, why we didn't choose option 1?
What do you mean one?
Option 1.
A?
Yeah, option 1. A object equal new.
Yeah,
A,
if A is abstract, then you cannot make object of type A. New A is wrong because A is abstract. This is not allowed.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions here? Okay.
Yes, please. I have 2 more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just share my screen for 1 second. This one. Wait, shared the wrong window. Yes, doctor, can you see my screen? Module
Yes.
7, abstract classes.
Yes.
Can you please, doctor, explain this slide? Because I found it a bit confusing.
Let me.
Like this one is like the opposite of this one, and they're pointing to the same area. So I found it a bit confusing. Can you please explain it?
Yeah, it's not very clear to me. This is slide what?
14 in module 7.
Yeah, let me open it from my side. Will be. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I will open it just 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. Okay, let me go back here. Yes. So this is the,
Yes, this one.
okay. You are creating a circle, storing it in shape, and creating a rectangle and store it in shape. Okay.
Mm.
Then you are calling the equals method, equal area. Equal area is a static method that takes two objects of type shape and checks if they are equal or not depending on their area.
On their area, yes.
Yes. So here when I say object one that gets area, if I call it, for example, here with shape one and shape two, shape one is what? Circle.
A circle.
So you are going to go to the get area of circle.
Mm-hmm.
And for object two, it is rectangle. So we are going to go to the get area of rectangle.
Okay.
So here in the static method, you are using get area, but get area is a method that appears in more than one, depending on the object. So you are going to go to the get area of the circle or get area of the rectangle, depending on the parameter. So in general here, equal area will check whether an area of two shapes is the same, regardless whether the shapes are same or different.
But what about the statements on the right? Methods invoked based on the object type, not the reference type, and method used based on the reference type, not the object type.
Yeah, here if I come here and of course, this is methods invoked based on object type. But here, in order for this to work, then the method's shape should contain the get area method.
The parent class.
Yes, the parent class should contain get area. Otherwise, you need to downcast. So we need
Okay, so
two things.
yes.
We need the reference
Yes.
to be correct for the compilation, and the method to be used at runtime is the one that depends on the object.
So how can methods invoked based on the object type and in the same time methods used based on the reference type?
No, the methods, you need to check that at compilation, the compiler need to check whether the method will create an issue or not. So if a method does not exist, it will give you an error so that the code will not run anyway. But if you, at runtime, you are going to check the method that's going to be used. So for example, here in the, I think here if I, of course, here the calling the equal area. If you call display shape, of course, display shape, it's going to print the area and the perimeter. Area and perimeter are defined in shape, so this will run correctly. At runtime, it's going to replace the get area depending on the shape, whether it is rectangle or circle. But of course, existence of the get area and get perimeter in the parent is required for this to run. If they are not available, then this will result in a compile error, and the solution to this is downcast.
Downcasting from shape to circle or rectangle.
Yes. So if, for example, the methods are available only in the subclasses, then in this case, you need to check if shape is instance of circle, then you downcast.
If shape instance of circle or if
Yeah,
circle
of course, shape,
instance of
this
shape.
is the parameter. I mean the parameter, the variable.
Okay.
If it is instance of circle, you downcast. So downcasting is required if the methods are not present in the superclass. But of course here, since in the abstract classes, I think if I go back here, then the abstract class, which is the previous one, shape.
Maybe the one before. Yes.
Yeah, shape is abstract. And in the abstract, we have the two methods, get area and get perimeter, that are abstract. Even if they're abstract, it means in the subclasses, they will exist. So the compiler
They will
will
exist
not
in
give
their
you an
own
error.
definition.
Yeah,
In
they
their
will
own
exist
definition,
and
yes.
their definition will be available. But for compilation purposes, being abstract at this level is enough.
Okay, so the methods depending on the object type are the ones you mentioned, depending on like that doesn't need downcasting.
Yes.
Because it's dependent on the object.
More questions?
Can I have one more final question, please?
Yeah, sure. In the slides or something
in module,
else?
Yeah, in module 5, slide 32.
Module 5.
Do you want me to share it or do you have it, Doctor?
Yeah, I have it. Let me. Module 5. Slide
32.
Okay. Passing method.
Yes. So for M2 C2 in line 11, after we declared it null,
Yeah,
aren't
now
we passing the reference
C1.
so that yes.
Let me see all of the code so that we don't confuse. You are creating here an object of my class that is available here, and you store it in C1. Simply, this is going to assign an ID. Then you say here M1 C1. M1 is a static method. You pass to it an object, and you are going to here set the ID. Instead of 1, you make it 2. So this is M1 C1. So C1 now as an object is going to contain an ID that is 2. Then when you print here C1 that get ID, it will print 2. Then you are creating another reference C2 and you make it null. It means that no object is available here. When I go here M2 C2, so I'm going to go to this method, static method C2. C equals, the parameter equals new my class. C does not contain a reference. It is what? C2.
It's undefined.
It is null. It is null. Here, C2 equals null. So you are sending the reference which has the value of null. Changing the reference here will not affect M2. Now, when I run here C2 that get ID, this will give me a null pointer exception.
Okay.
Null pointer exception.
What about?
Because here, remember that when you pass to the method a reference, you are not allowed to change that reference, whether it is null or not null. See here, C2 is null. I pass it to the method M2, so C2 will remain as null. It's not going to be changed.
But what about in line 8? We were able to change the data field for C1.
Of course, here, C1, you are using the method setter to modify. So we did
So it
not
will
change the
modify the
reference.
content.
We use the reference to modify the content of that object using its method, which is setter.
Okay. Okay, it's clear now. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Yeah, anyone else? Any more questions?
Yes, I have a question about the previous slide.
Yes, the one that I was showing.
Yes.
Yes.
And in my class, why we didn't use the keyword this ID? Why we only used ID? Is
Yeah,
that okay?
this is needed if the parameter of the constructor or a method, it is the same as the name of the instance value. So this is optional if the parameter is different name. For example, here in the setter, we have integer ID value. If the parameter here in the set was ID only, then I need to say this.id equals ID. Here, this.id equals 1 is possible, optional, but normally in Java style, if things that are optional, we don't include them.
Okay, thank you.
More questions? Yes. If there are more questions, no more questions, we'll conclude.
أتوقع خلاص. السلام عليكم، يعطيك العافية دكتور، ما
الله
قصرت.
يعافيك.
بس بسوي شير حق التقييم مع ان الاغلب طلع، بس خلي يسوون الباقي.
Yeah, just maybe you send it to them and they will fill it.
ارسلها لهم في الجروب. بس خلي اشوف. لحظة.
So should I leave?
اي دكتور خلاص، يعطيك العافية.
If there are no questions, I can leave.